Hi guys, my name's Barry and welcome back to the channel. I'm going to be doing a review for Salem's Lot from 2024 today. I don't think I will be including any spoilers in this review, guys. So if you haven't seen the movie and you don't want to be spoiled, then fear not, there's no spoilers here. I'll give you a quick backstory before we get into this. I've not seen the 1979 miniseries for quite some time. I'm talking maybe 25 years I've not seen this, so I don't really remember the original miniseries too much, so I will have to go back and watch that at some point. I did plan on doing a review for that before this, but I didn't have the time to do so, so I'll maybe do it at a later date. And the 2004 remake to the miniseries with Rob Lowe, I haven't seen that whatsoever, so I can't comment on that. However, this happens to be the 2024 version, just happens to be the very first movie that's called Salem's Lot. So it's not a remake of the miniseries, it's just an adaptation of the Stephen King novel. Before I went into the movie, I knew this could be a mess. I'm not saying it is a mess, but I'm saying that I went into it thinking this could potentially be a mess because of how fast they had to put it together when they decided let's keep it, because it got to a point where it was going to be like the Batgirl film and the Wiley and Coyote film where they were just going to scrap it completely, and they decided not to do that. So because of the amount of delays that went on with this movie and the amount of cutting that I would imagine they'd have to do quickly, I thought this could potentially be a mess. So at one point, it wasn't even going to see the light of day, but miraculously, Max took it on and we got a direct-to-streaming film. With Lewis Pullman being the main star in this movie, I thought with all the delays that were going on with Salem's Lot, what would another couple of months do with the release of Thunderbolts in February? Lewis Pullman is in Thunderbolts. If that is a good film, of course, then it would have been more successful possibly if they released it after the release of Thunderbolts, but they obviously didn't do that. They wanted to give it a Halloween release. Ben Mears returns to Salem's Lot after around 20 or so years. His parents died in a car accident and he left and he hasn't been back since, but he's coming back now because he is a successful author or a semi-successful author, and he's coming back to his old town of Salem's Lot for some writing inspiration. That's a standard Stephen King character development right there. As far as the character development goes with anyone else, there's not much there apart from Mark, who is a newcomer to the town and he gets bullied, but he tells the audience and the characters that he needs to stand up to his bullies, otherwise that'll continue on for the rest of his life. So we only really get that backstory with Mark. Nobody else has that ample amount of backstory. Whilst Ben returns, we also have a newcomer to the town, Barlow, who is the vampire who wants to take over Salem's Lot, and his house, his mansion, is ran by Mr. Straker. Straker is responsible for bringing Barlow his victims. He needs to start out quite small, so he takes a couple of children to begin with, just so that Barlow can get up his strength again, so they can take over the town and eventually the world. I'm assuming it's not just Salem's Lot that Barlow is targeting. With the sounds of things, after he's done with Salem's Lot, he'll probably move on from town to town until he takes over cities, countries, and then eventually the world. I think the acting was decent, but I think the main pull for me was Lewis Pullman. I think he's a really strong actor. He looks like he could be a future leading man in films. I think he was that good in this one. In terms of everyone else in the film, I think they were all serviceable, and that's kind of thanks to the choppy film that we got in the end, which we'll discuss, but I just think that everyone else was there just to be there, and that was it. The CGI wasn't too bad. I don't think there was anything there that was off-putting, and I think that's because they did spend quite a bit of money on this film before they decided to axe it, so everything is looking quite polished there. It doesn't look cheap or anything like that. It's just that the film was cut in a really bad way. The look of Barlow was actually pretty decent, and I think it's good that they kept the look of the original 1979 miniseries, but I couldn't help but think anytime I saw Barlow on screen, he reminded me of a cross between Valak and Nomak. So here's the biggest issue, the pacing of the film, how it was cut together. Now, intentionally, this film was apparently supposed to be around 3 hours long, which makes sense because the miniseries are miniseries that are about 3 hours long anyway, so they've got more time to tell their story. But this one, had it got that 3 hour release, it would have had its time to tell that story, but it was compact into less than 2 hours, and you can tell that it has been cut to pieces. There was, for one scene, for example, the high school teacher or the school teacher he went up to Ben and Susan and he said to them, "There's vampires in the town, we need to stop them." And without hesitation, they went, "Yep, okay, let's go and help you defeat these vampires." And I'm like, but what about the scenes where you would imagine them to question? Like, are you on drugs? Are you drunk? Um, Show us some evidence of these vampires that you see are there. It just cut from the scene where he tells them there's vampires to a scene where they're holding crosses and helping him out. And I'm like, oh, it seems like there's a good couple of scenes missing out here. I'm assuming then that the scenes featuring Susan and Ben starting to believe the teacher have been cut out. So there's a lot of pacing issues. That's just one example that happens throughout the film. The beginning of it is suffers from it, the middle of it suffers from it, and then the end of the movie, which I won't give away, but the end of the movie definitely suffers from it because we get to a point where it looks like a build-up of the end of the film. And I'm like, okay, it looks like there's probably about 45 minutes, an hour left, but they condensed that end to like 20 minutes. And as much as I enjoyed the ending, I thought there's pieces missing and I wanted more. I genuinely don't know why they cut things out. Why not keep it as long as you possibly could? It's a streaming film. There's no commercials or adverts required for a streaming film. Just release the whole thing on Max. I just don't understand why they had to cut it down. Like I said though, the previous two adaptations, albeit I've not seen the Rob Lowe one, but the previous two adaptations had that time to grow their characters, a lot of character development, and not rush anything throughout. So generally, people will probably think that those two miniseries are a lot better than the film. And I agree. Again, I've not seen the Rob Lowe one. I would probably agree that it has got more time to develop those characters because it is longer. But without the pacing issues with Salem's Lot film, I don't think this is bad at all. I think it looked good. The acting was good, especially by Lewis Pullman. The Barlow character looked pretty good as well. And it had a good story because it's a Stephen King adaptation. It's just that pacing that's the issue. Had it not had the pacing issues, I think this would be a really good film for 2024. But because of the pacing issues, that's what it lacks. It's an okay film. It just needed some better pacing in it. I almost feel like they've intentionally done this to us so that in the future they release a 4K physical media copy of the 3-hour coherent cut that they intended to show us initially. Maybe they're just putting out the feelers there to see if we like it and if it's worth giving us that 3-hour cut. Hopefully they do release the coherent cut. Overall though, guys, this wasn't a bad film. I think if you're looking for something spooky around Halloween time that's under 2 hours long, then I would recommend Salem's Lot, the movie, at the end of the day. Some pacing issues aside, is an okay film. If you don't mind pacing issues or the story itself and the character development, then I think you'll like this film. If that is an issue, then you will notice it for definite, but I still think it's worth a watch. So what are your thoughts on Salem's Lot from 2024, guys? Leave your comments down below, let me know what you think of it, and I'll talk to you soon.
Meeting adjourned.
I'll be right back.
What are you waiting for, huh?
Coming to get you, Barbara.
Ever played Skin the Cat?
Someone's in the back! See!